thinking about the behavior of people is interesting here because it's like the starting point is Google or YouTube, and then it goes into other, and then it's the Spotify and Apple. Yeah. So it's thinking of that like journey, I think, is super important.
And I think what you just said there is, a big reason why I think it's important to be everywhere. Like have it on iTunes, have it on Spotify, have it on YouTube, have it, anywhere you can find the content, have your content available there, because even these trends might shift over time. So might as well be where everybody's looking.
This is an intro. Intro.
Hustle and Flowchart with your boy, my boy, Matt Wolfe and Joe Fier.
Hey, what up, my friend?
Not much.
Whoop. Pumping it up from second one on the podcast. This is one of them solo shows or duet shows, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Therapy session. Are we going to call it that again?
Why not?
We stopped calling them therapy sessions, and then people started going, I really liked how you titled those therapy sessions. That was a perfect name for them.
It's the power of the branding, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking a lot about branding in the last couple weeks. So on these Tuesday episodes that go live, or if you're listening to it on a Saturday, it's this episode. It's the first of the two during the week that come out.
It's also another first.
What's the first of it? Oh, yes.
These beautiful mic arms that we're now using. So if you're watching us on the YouTubes, you will notice that our setup is a little bit different. We got some cool mic arms now. Next thing we got to do is get rid of these big old bulky headphones.
That's the next Anthony Trucks. Yeah, he was telling us about these in-ear monitors that I think we're gonna peek into. I don't know the name of them, but when we get them, we'll show them off. We want to be hands-free, hands-free, cord-free. I mean, all that stuff.
Stress-free,
work-free. A lot of happiness, a lot of fun. On that point.
All right,
let's chat about what we're thinking about, huh?
Yeah, so this is an episode for those of you thinking about podcast and YouTube, and those of you that aren't thinking about podcasting and YouTube, also listen in, because we're going to tell you why you should be thinking about podcast and YouTube. But this episode, we're going to kind of cover some things that have been happening in the world of content creation.
Yeah,
let's just call. Fair. I think that's like a good sort of bucket term, content creation, right? We're going to talk about podcast, YouTube, video, stuff, that kind of stuff, OnlyFans, the whole game.
What? That just got people's attention.
Yeah. But before we do, let's tell them about the flow notes.
The flow notes are important for this one. So you are going to want these because we'll be talking about a lot of where the puck is going in our eyes. Yep. A lot of trends that we see happening, some stats that we'll want to show you.
Maybe making a couple predictions.
Some predictions and action steps for you. So get the flow notes. They are ready for you right now. If you go to flowchartgroup.com, you only have 2 weeks, and that's quite a bit of time. You have 2 weeks of this episode going live to get them for free. After that, they go into our epic vault. Yes. That's the door closing.
I thought that was an explosion.
No, but maybe that's what happens in the vault. I don't know.
We explode the notes?
That would be weird.
That would be weird.
We don't explode. That was the sound of the big metal door slamming, but it's not slammed yet. It's still open if it's within 2 weeks. Go to flowchartgroup.com, plug your email address in. It also gives you access to our Facebook group, but make sure you plug in your email address. That's how you get the flow notes.
Yes, and if you aren't watching this on YouTube right now, go to hustleandflowchart.tv and subscribe over on YouTube, because we are putting a ton of effort into YouTube, and we're going to talk about why we're putting a ton of effort into YouTube in this episode.
That makes sense.
But we would love it if you would follow us over there and give us feedback and let us know how we can improve the YouTube channel, because we're making it for you guys.
Yeah, it's not for us.
Yeah. And then one last thing.
What else?
We got a sponsor.
We do have a beautiful sponsor. They're fabulous, and they are right here. Yo.
Hey.
Hi. You're here. I think I would like some more organic traffic for our website.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah? I mean, we have a lot of traffic. Do you think we want more, or do you think everyone else would deserve or would like more for their websites as well?
Can we do it for free?
Is this a rhetorical question? Yes, it's a rhetorical question. Dang, right?
Yeah, well, I want to know if I can do it for free.
Well, you can now. Why is that, Mr. Matt?
Because if you go over to ahrefs.com/AWT, they have a new cool tool. Well, it's a cool tool.
Cool tool, yeah.
Called Ahrefs Webmaster Tools, and it's over at ahrefs.com/AWT, and it does a lot of the same stuff that the full-fledged Ahrefs does, but it's a free version.
So they basically made this tool, Webmaster Tools. It's ahrefs.com/AWT. It's going to monitor your SEO health of your website, so you can make sure, hey, are there any issues I should be looking at? And it basically scans your site. There's like over 100 typical SEO issues that would like flag Google and all the search engines? Well, it's going to tell you what's wrong with your site, so you know exactly, and actually the advice on how to fix those things. That's pretty dang important. SEO still is our number one new traffic driver for our websites. Really, that's across all of our websites. That's how people discover us. So you might as well have a little read, a finger on the pulse of the health of your website and the SEO. It also does backlink monitoring, all these other search traffic terms and things. It's free though.
It's free, yeah. Monitor your SEO health, backlinks, and keywords for free over at hrefs.com/AWT. That rhymed.
All right, so today we at the time of this recording, it's the day that we've also done a pod hacker call.
Done did it,
and it was a 2-hour epic call. We do these twice a month with our pod hacker community, our customers there. We also do stream those, so it's something to pay attention to on Pod Hacker on YouTube. That's another channel, so if you want to go follow that, if you want to go like granular on the tactics and all that stuff around podcasting, content marketing, kind of the stuff we're going to be talking about in this episode.
Yeah.
That's where you want to go find that. But we do those twice a month as part of Pod Hacker. And then the other, we do the open office hours calls, which we recorded once per month. And the other one, about 2 weeks separated, is an expert that we bring on.
Yes, and those are only available for Pod Hacker members.
Those are customers only because we're going deep on the strategies.
Yeah.
That's what it's kind of like, we're like, hey, there's a lot of cool things that we're noticing in the stats and the trends. And we have actually some graphs pulled up right now that we want to share, and it would help everyone.
Yeah.
So
and if you're watching the YouTube video, I'm sure these screenshots and stats will be overlaid as we talk about them. But so let's dive into why we've put some focus on YouTube based on data, right?
Sure.
Like we've been putting our focus on YouTube based on sort of gut feel of where the market's going, but now we actually have data in front of us to put to it to sort of further explain why YouTube is the way to go right now.
It explains our gut reactions.
Yes.
I feel like we've been pretty good at the trends, or at least predicting of where we see things headed over the years.
Especially in the podcast sort of creator space.
It helps to be super tapped in and be connected to a lot of other podcasters who are sharing what's working and what's not. And also just entrepreneurs, business owners, thought leaders. Like it's I guess a benefit, obviously, of having a podcast. But I feel like the gut reaction is typically pretty accurate. I think our, and just to go a little therapy for a hot second, is because it's part of the show, we just haven't believed in ourselves, I feel like, or our gut reactions until now. Like we have seen a lot of these trends, or we've heard of Bitcoin, like where it's like, we hear something that's probably not mainstream. It's kind of like, in the dark alley, let's whisper about this Bitcoin thing, because that's a story from back in whenever in Austin. We did not get into Bitcoin when it was like $50 a coin.
Had we done that, we probably would have sold when it doubled in value anyway.
That's a good point. We were like, hey, I made $100. Wow. So, I feel like we have some pretty good gut reactions because we're consuming so much. You consume a ton outside of the podcast. And I feel like we both kind of keep an eye on trends. But up until now, we haven't really realized, like, man, we haven't had the balls full in. Yeah.
Haven't had the balls to predict things publicly.
Or take action. Yeah. No, I'm saying more take action. And like for ourselves is like, man, going in on the brand. Like now we're like willing to invest a crap ton of money.
Yeah.
But know that there's a lot of benefits of doing that. And that's where we're going with these.
Sort of a callback to the last therapy session episode that we did of just like, we had this bigger picture media brand in mind back in 2013 and we never really shot for it the way we thought we could. Yeah. And now we're kind of going, all right, let's just go all in on this. Go broke.
Why wait?
Make it to where we want to go, or go broke trying, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, let's be honest. A lot worse things can happen.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of fallback options if we lean into where we truly do feel things are headed, but now we're being validified by stats. And over the years, I'm just like, it's interesting.
Is validified a word?
Validify. I think so. I'm going to make it.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it is. Jacob, you can fact check me on that, please. If I'm wrong, that's fine. Make it wrong, Joe.
Yeah.
I get that a lot.
All right.
So let's get into it. What are we talking about, Matt?
So there's some Edison research stats that we were looking at recently, and we were talking about them with our pod hacker audience earlier today as of this recording, and we were sort of riffing on it in real time because this is really fascinating. So I want to start actually with this second screenshot here. And this survey question that Edison asked was, on which service do you most often listen to podcasts? And this survey was from Q2 of 2021. So I mean,
now?
Yeah,
or
like a month ago or something.
Yeah.
And so the top 3 answers of where people listen to podcasts, number 1 was Spotify. Number 2 was Apple Podcasts. And number 3, YouTube.
Yeah. YouTube?
Yeah.
Is that what you call
YouTube.
it? YouTube.
Actually, my kids call it YubTub. They always go, Dad, can we watch YubTub?
YubTub.
They know it's called YouTube. They just like to call it YubTub. So
I like YubTub.
Yeah, so YubTub is the is the third most, is the place that people watch podcasts, the third most. I think the Spotify thing is fascinating to me that it passed Apple Podcasts.
Well, that was a trend that we've been eyeing for a while, and we keep our eyes on the stats, of course. All these things. Edison Research, by the way, is like, I think probably the most trusted research organization. You see them mentioned a lot in the podcast space. I think they touch a lot of other spaces as well, but that's where this data is coming from. So if you want to look up Edison Research, you can deep dive on your own. Maybe we'll link them up too. But
yeah, I think it looks like this is from like the Podcast Consumer Report of some
I think
sort.
they put them out every quarter. So that's a good way to tap in and kind of see where we're looking at things.
Yeah, but it's fascinating that Spotify sort of outpaced Apple as far as like which platform people listen to podcasts on. And I think it kind of makes sense, right? Because I think that the sort of gateway drug to listening to podcasts were shows like Joe Rogan, Dax Shepard, all
the other celebrities, Call Her Daddy.
Yeah, Call Her Daddy. All of these other shows were sort of the gateway that got people into listening to podcasts. And then Spotify went, oh, this is what people are listening to. Let's make it exclusive to us. And then once you're listening to some of those podcasts on Spotify, you don't really want to go switch to a different platform to listen to different podcasts. You just want to listen to them all on the same platform. So you just stick with Spotify. Pretty brilliant strategy for them.
But I've moved to Spotify. Like I'm going to say it's still not the best UI. The experience going through there, like I have a hell of a time trying to find, like I was researching for BJ Fogg the other day, listen to Armchair Expert.
Yeah.
And then, sometime like later in the day, I wanted to listen to some like rock, Bob Seger, and, or in some other music, but I was like, how do I just go back to that podcast? And it was really tough. I had to like research it. Search it with my finger. I'm like, it was kind of annoying. So I think they should improve a lot, but you're right. I think that the attention and the fact that everyone's just kind of like these exclusive shows are probably a big part of it.
Yeah. One thing that, I mean, it's probably not an annoyance to most people, but it bugs me, is that like the Spotify app on your computer, you can't do the same things that you can do with the Spotify app on your phone. So like I can go and make a playlist of podcast episodes I want to listen to on my phone. I could go and say, okay, I want to listen to this Dax Shepard episode with BJ Fogg, and then I want to listen to Joe Rogan interview Elon Musk, and then kind of queue up some podcasts and just sort of let my podcast player listen to them in order. I can do that on the Spotify app. You can't do that in the Spotify app on your computer. I didn't know that. You can't create podcast playlists. You can create music playlists, but not podcast playlists. The app, you can create podcast playlists, which the reason it's annoying to me is I usually find out about new podcast episodes that I want to listen to when I'm at my computer, not when I'm at my phone. Right? True. So now, like, I might be reading a blog post and somebody will say, this was a really good episode. Everybody should listen to it. I would want to just open up Spotify on my computer, find that episode, and add it to a playlist. But I can't do that. I have to pull out my phone, find that episode on my phone, and add it to a playlist. And that little thing is just sort of bugs me a little bit. I mean, it doesn't bug me enough to not use Spotify, but it bugs me.
So are you using Spotify over Overcast now?
No. I use Spotify because I have to for Joe Rogan and Dax, and I love those two shows. Yeah. But almost every other podcast I listen to, I still go to Overcast.
So, I mean, we've been looking at this for years. It feels like maybe a couple years now. This whole thing of Spotify and Apple, and obviously Apple's been like the big behemoth since podcasts started. They basically put it on the map. Yeah. But then Spotify came through and just started freaking investing in everything podcasts. And it's been interesting to watch some of these graphs. Like, I think it's Edison Research, or maybe people will like visualize Edison Research's research findings. And it's like the globe. I'm picturing like all the countries on the map right now, and they've slowly been turning green, like green for Spotify, but purple for Apple. And it's like the US was like the holdout.
They're still holding out on Apple. Yeah.
I mean, it might still be, but it seemed like all the other countries are slowly going green. And then the takeover, I don't know where it's at with US specifically. There's probably some other stats we could dig into.
Yeah, we just don't have them in front of us right now.
But it just shows like, man, they've been on a war path.
Yeah, Spotify has taken over for the podcasting world. But also, I didn't realize until seeing this graph that many people listen to podcasts on YouTube, right? It was the third most, the third place that most people listen to on. So when Spotify, Apple, and then YouTube, 18% of people polled prefer to listen to podcasts on YouTube, right? So we've been putting a lot of focus on YouTube because we kind of feel that discoverability on most of the podcast platforms is really difficult, but YouTube has some great discoverability algorithms built in, right? So like if we had BJ Fogg on the show and BJ Fogg has a TED Talk, our show could get recommended in YouTube. Our episode could get recommended next to the TED Talk. So if you just watch the TED Talk and you want to dive deeper with BJ, our episode could potentially show up in that little right column on YouTube as one of the other recommended videos, right?
That might be a strategy that we're going to use for BJ specifically. That was actually a strategy or an idea for the titling from Tano, who's a member in Podhacker, super active. So thank you, Tano.
Yeah.
Because we'll see if that actually works. Because there's so much opportunity to leverage other people's work and then show up as a recommended video.
And there's not really anything like that in the podcast world. I know there's platforms that are trying to do that kind of thing, but like even in Spotify, like it's not very good at recommending other podcasts based on what you just listened to.
It's trying to. Yeah. Like on the home screen, I think it recommends, well, for me, it's Joe Rogan a lot, Armchair. It could be because those are podcasts I love.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to like, what is Spotify? I was going to say Spodcast. That's kind of cool. But like, I wonder what Spotify is recommending as a whole, like people that don't listen to maybe an exclusive show from Spotify.
Maybe they're not recommending podcasts at all. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if they're just pushing their own stuff, you know, right now, and they might be.
I think if you have a tendency to only listen to music on Spotify, they only recommend music. I don't know though, because I listen to both and I get recommendations for both.
Same.
I just don't feel like the recommendations I get are like real dialed into what I've actually listened to in the past on Spotify.
I don't know.
But YouTube is just like, oh, they like watching videos about BJ Fogg. Here's more videos about BJ Fogg, and ours is right there in the mix.
It's
right?
so cool. Yeah. And that's literally the reason why we're putting so much effort into YouTube.
Yeah.
Is that
discoverability.
But what's to say that just Spotify can't do the same? Like I genuinely think that Spotify is going to become the audio version of YouTube, where it will over time become more of a searchable thing, recommended thing. There's probably a lot of, I know that there's ads that you can run. I don't know if we'll get into that in one of these graphics, but they already have ads on Spotify, but for a podcaster, the targeting's not too great.
Yeah.
Like it's still very broad, and there's some limitations for certain people. I think you have to have a $250 budget per month minimum. But I mean, it's worth a shot. But that just shows you they're creeping their way there. They're investing in it.
It's 100% their goal to be the YouTube of audio, right? Like they built Anchor, which makes it really easy to publish podcasts on their platform.
Yeah.
Their platform is free. You can either pay a premium amount or you don't have to pay, and it's all ad supported. That's exactly YouTube's model.
And they have Anchor, to basically put more creators into the platform.
Yeah, that was the first thing I said. So like Anchor is designed to basically make it easy to get the podcast online.
Machine,
And then and then Spotify plays them for free, and then they're going to inject ads into them unless you pay their premium, and then they don't put the ads in it. It's like identical to YouTube, just without the video. And even with like Joe Rogan, they've even incorporated video. It's not like site wide. I think Joe Rogan's the only one I know of that has video at the moment. So. But
what's to say that's not going to roll out later?
So I wouldn't be surprised if they actually even start chasing after some of YouTube's.
I agree.
People actually, that's already started to happen. There's actually been other YouTubers who focus on YouTube that have gotten pulled into Spotify instead.
Well, obviously Joe Rogan, because he had a big YouTube following. That's why he was always streaming. Who's someone else?
I don't remember any of their names. For some reason, I remember hearing like David Dobrik's name thrown around at one point about how he was offered like a Spotify exclusive deal. I don't know if it's true or not, but there's been some other YouTubers that focus on YouTube that I've heard have tried to have been offered the opportunity to move over to Spotify with their video stuff from YouTube.
I'd be curious to like see how that translates over from like a creator type of thing on YouTube where the format's probably wildly different.
Well, there's no commenting, there's no interaction, there's no like community engagement on Spotify, which I think is a big barrier for YouTube creators to come over. I think they want to be more interactive with their communities.
Yeah. Well, that might change because I know there was something in the news. We won't get into it now, but it seems like they're integrating ways to make money through Spotify. You know, through like premium content. That's something Apple is experimenting with as well, but have kind of failed with their subscriptions. It's been sloppy and it's kind of like a mess from what we've heard just from reading things. But yeah. So yeah, there's interesting things.
Yeah, and so here's another thing that came from the poll. Suppose you heard about a podcast that you were interested in listening to, but didn't know where to find it. Where would you go to try to find it? The number one response, YouTube. Number two, Google. Spotify. Let's see, I can't read 4%. That on my. So 4% for Spotify. Apple was what, 2%? And then there's a big old slice for other.
12 for other and 2% don't know. But 50% was YouTube and 30% Google.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but I felt like YouTube wasn't always psychologically the place to go to search. I mean, for how to, maybe more so there, but now I feel like it's just going there for everything almost. You know, like obviously if you're looking for a granular like little bit, you know, an article or something, but there's so like it's just that as a search engine seems to be what people want, the visual, the back and forth. It's more engaging. There's a community there. Yeah, it still gives you what you want.
Here's the thing too though, is that Google and YouTube are, you know, they're the same company, right? So when you Google something on the search engine, most of the time you actually see YouTube videos as some of the results.
True that.
Right? So like literally 70% is like how people discover new podcasts or when they hear about a podcast and they go search it out. 70%
That's
are
80%,
going.
bro. That's 50 plus 30.
50. Oh, I thought that was 20. I can't read it from more. So 80% of people are going to one of the Google platforms to find it. Yeah. And so, yeah, YouTube just makes sense in that context.
I was just checking my eyes. I'm like, yeah, it is 30. That's crazy. I mean, well, pause there for a sec. Look at Apple. 2%.
Yeah.
Apple is 2%.
So if somebody told you about the Hustle and Flow Chart
you
podcast.
ain't going to Apple.
And you're like, I'm going to go hunt this podcast down. Only 2% of people are going to go to Apple to hunt it down.
So think about that. When you're mentioning your podcast or anything with your brand, and we're not just talking podcasts, but this is podcast, but let's be honest. It's like anything with content.
Yeah.
Shout it out on YouTube or make sure you have it on YouTube in some format. At least for the discoverability of it. Like it could be just snippets of your content. Maybe you don't want to do the full thing and go crazy, but like have some, I know Brian Bogert was on here recently and he was talking about, 2 to 3 minute clips. And obviously you can go longer, we go longer, but like as little like quick hit things that get people's attention and like bring you in like further into their journey. Why not show up there and really craft a message or look at your content and be like, oh, that would be a really good clip. That's interesting. Put a little call to action so they can go to the next best thing.
Yeah. Well, I would say at the very, very, very least, go get like repurpose.io where every podcast episode that you release, it automatically puts it on YouTube. I mean, it'll be a static image.
Better than nothing.
And, maybe some like waveforms and then you could just listen to the audio. True. But at least your podcast will show up if somebody's searching for your podcast on the place that 80% of people are searching for podcasts.
That's wild. And it's crazy that Apple is 2%. That's like kind of, I mean, let's be honest, Spotify is only 4%. So, and we just looked at the graph above, which is showing that Spotify is where people listen mainly. And then 3% less than that go to podcasts on Apple Podcasts. So it's, thinking about the behavior of people is interesting here because it's like the starting point is Google or YouTube or YouTube and Google in that order. And then it goes into other, and then it's the Spotify and Apple. So it's like the discovery is happening on YouTube and Google. And then the second, like when people are really interested, then they seek you out or they find you or link to you somehow or link you to Spotify primarily or Apple. Yeah. So it's thinking of that like journey, I think, is super important.
And I think what you just said there is, a big reason why I think it's important to be everywhere. Like have it on iTunes, have it on Spotify, have it on YouTube, have it, anywhere you can find the content, have your content available there because even these trends might shift over time. So might as well be where everybody's looking. And then this final one here, reasons for listening to or watching podcasts most often on YouTube.
blow it up a little bit for us?
Here. Try again.
Click it.
There we go. Okay. So reasons for listening to or watching podcasts most often on YouTube. Number one reason, you already use YouTube to listen to or watch other types of content.
Right? Go where they're at already for their behavior.
Right. This is the same reason that we've never moved away from having Facebook groups, right? We have the Pod Hacker Facebook group, the Hustle and
Even though we don't like it so much.
We're not huge fans of being on Facebook all the time, but that's where everybody's hanging out.
Yeah,
everybody's
the best
on
solution
Facebook
now.
Yeah, so you're basically saying you're basically putting your content in line with where the audience is hanging out, right? So YouTube is where audiences are hanging out, and if you want them to just kind of discover your podcast, you've got to have the podcast on the platform where they're already hanging out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so what else we got? That's 41% of people say the reason why they're watching podcasts most often on YouTube is because they're already there.
And that actually
probably just got recommended from somewhere else, and they're going down the YouTube rabbit hole with you.
And I saw something recently that like Joe Rogan, I don't know the exact percentage, so I'm just going to pull it out of my butt, but like Joe Rogan lost like 20% of his listenership when he moved over to Spotify. It was a big percentage. I don't know the exact number.
It's huge.
That explains it, right? Like the reason I watched so much Joe Rogan a year ago was it kept on getting recommended to me on YouTube.
Well,
I don't get it recommended as much. I still get the clips every once in a while, but not nearly as much.
Yeah, you're right. I get clips still, not as much. Well, here's what's interesting, what you just said. So number one reason, 41% of people in this whole thing here said that, is it a percentage? Actually, that's not percentage because that does not add up to 100. So let's say the number one, 41 plus 39 plus 35 plus 27 plus 20.
Yeah, so percentage.
That's not percentage, but
what does this say? Percentage ranking item in top 3. I don't even know what that means.
So the way I'm going to decipher this is the number one thing is what you just said, which is true based off of this graph. You could decipher this yourself if you're watching this on YouTube. So they're already on the platform. That's most people said that. The second thing is that they're listening to podcasts because they're free.
Yeah.
So to your point, Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
He ain't free anymore on YouTube. There's clips, but those are little teasers. They're there to grab you, and because it's call to action at the end of every one of those clips now, it says, hey, I'm over on Spotify now. Go check me over there.
But you can listen on Spotify for free,
it's
which
free
is
there. Yeah, but
interesting,
it's disconnect. It's almost like, but there is this, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are like, "What the fuck? You're over there." You know,
like if I'm hanging out watching content on one platform, and your call to action is to leave this platform and check out my content on a different platform,
it's like another barrier.
It's just a barrier to moving over across to the other platform.
Yeah.
The third response was you prefer listening to podcasts that include video.
That's interesting. Actually, I was very surprised by that one.
Yeah,
it gets it. I mean, because we always think, we're like, really? Like, people just want to see, like, talking heads, people just chatting back and forth with each other or with themselves, maybe. Yeah. But I guess they do. I mean, that's the top third thing.
I found myself doing that. Like, I remember I've definitely watched full-on 3 hours of Joe Rogan in the past where I just watched the whole video. I've definitely watched... like a full-on Colin and Samir video where they talk for 45 minutes on an interview. So, I mean, I find myself doing that.
Russell Brand, I'm thinking of him because he gets recommended a lot. He has interviews, and they're not that polished, but it's like back, forth, cut, back, forth. We're using Riverside.fm now. So it's like you could just use something like that very simply to do. And I think they even have editing in there.
They do, yeah. We haven't tried any of those features, but they do, yeah.
But you could totally just pull it off doing that. And guys like Russell Brand, I mean, he'll make solo episode content as well, or just content for YouTube. It's just him sitting in the same chair in the same little corner of his house. And the thing gets, obviously it's Russell Brand, but he gets a lot of attention. I think he's growing because he's consistently putting out content every day.
Yeah.
And he's literally just cranking up the camera, the setup, and just talking.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it gets published partially on Luminary or wherever he's publishing his podcast too. But again, it's not fancy. It's just him talking to camera.
Yeah.
Showing up on the platform. So
this is all very fascinating information. If you're watching on YouTube, we will overlay these images. Was there anything else you wanted to dive into on this one?
Well, I think the topic of really thinking of platforms. I don't know. I forget how much we've talked about that in the last couple episodes because we've been talking a lot about branding and kind of where we see our brand going, but also where we see marketing in general and engagement with content online. Being so much in the direct response marketing area or internet marketing, this is where we got our roots. Our roots started there, but we definitely see that, there's other things to pay attention to and how to get attention and keep attention. And I feel like a lot of that goes into platforms. The power platforms. We already talked about YouTube.
Yeah, we talked about the platform thing last week about like Skillshare and like
talked a little about that.
And like getting your content in other platforms and being a little less focused on like the direct response element, right? Like, listen to last week's episode that came out last Tuesday, because we went pretty deep on like where we see content and putting our information in like a premium manner online in that episode, pretty in some depth.
And there's reasons for, and so a couple things here. There is another piece of news here that is interesting, but before saying that, it's another audio-based chatting app. In this case, it's Fireside. This is a Mark Cuban new app and something he's putting out there. And he was just at Podcast Movement. Basically said, what did he say? Podcasts are old, tired, and beat up, adding that there's only one way to monetize. Bullshit. By lying your ass off to secure sponsorships.
Yeah. Well, Mark Cuban's a little biased, first of all, because he's got this tool Fireside, which is
I love Mark Cuban and all that, but that's obviously a bullshit statement.
Yeah. No, it's a very it's a very like, I have the solution for you statement, right? Like, podcasts are dead. You don't pay attention to them. The answer is Fireside.
It's divisive. He's right. And he's very biased. So, but I just wanted to bring that up because that did make the news that actually Jacob on our team was over there at Podcast Movement in Nashville and saw that, and he was like, it was total BS.
Yeah.
So sorry for all my BSs. That you can thank Jacob because he put that in my mind. But no, just the statement, like when it's a blanket statement like that, A, obviously is an agenda, and B, it's BS because you've heard us talk about it and we have all the stats to prove it. So does pretty much any other marketer or podcaster. But back to the whole audio chat thing. Clubhouse. We were hot on Clubhouse, or at least we seemed hot on Clubhouse.
For a couple weeks.
For a couple weeks. I mean, a little bit. And, the environment changed there. And, going on Clubhouse, I didn't see a lot of friends on there anymore.
No.
Some people probably moved on. But the beauty of these things is that you can use these platforms as a discovery engine. It's not like you need to live on these platforms, but it's like, maybe Fireside is great. I don't know. We've never used it, never seen anything about it, but it could be something that can just like maybe light a spark and like pass the right people your way as like a little discovery engine.
So anybody who's listening that might like, this is the first time you're actually hearing about Fireside, basically what it is it's like a Clubhouse kind of group room where you have people up on stage and you have listeners in the room, and it's like a group communication tool. One of the major differences is it's designed to actually record these conversations, and then these conversations could be shared as podcast episodes. They actually partnered with Libsyn, which is the same company that hosts this podcast, to make it so that when you record these group conversations, they automatically get fed into your hosting company and your podcast just kind of rolls out, right? So like that's what Fireside is. I have some strong opinions. We've definitely debated a little bit, but I don't think these sort of social chat apps are ever going to be like a massive thing. I think there's kind of a fad that are going to die out, and I think Fireside's going to be right there with it.
It'd be interesting to hear about like from folks like Steve Olsher, who runs a big group on Clubhouse for Podcast Magazine. I mean, go check it out, join it. It's great. It's a very interesting model on how he's shout out to Steve. What up, dog? He's created like a machine out of that and has other people like at certain times. I don't know if he's still doing it, but I think so, where it's like he actually has other podcasters in place to hold these shows at different timings on that platform, and he has this club that essentially helps grow the brand, and it's all feeding Podcast Magazine and that brand. It's brilliant. So I'd be curious to hear like someone from him and also Deb Cole. Like, she's been on we did a YouTube like 30-minute thing with her, and she's deep on all this kind of stuff too. So
Gary Henderson too.
He's
another one we went deep on Clubhouse with.
I'd be curious to revisit this maybe in the next couple months or so.
Where do you see it going? I want to know your opinion.
I see it kind of like what I just said. I agree with you that it's not going to be the thing that most people are going to latch onto because of all the reasons that we talked about. Like it's super time consuming.
Yeah.
Unless you love that, I think it's diluted. Like you said, it's completely changed since we joined.
Well, that's Clubhouse. I want to know what you think.
Fireside? Yeah, I don't know enough about it, to be honest. Like we've never used it, but like in terms of Honestly, I don't know what the selling points are. I mean, do you know more details?
Well, no, but I know that if it's similar to Clubhouse, like a social chat app, I don't believe it's going to pan out well.
Yeah.
I think they'll probably pivot a few times to try to find out what the thing actually is that they're trying to do. Because right now it sounds like they're trying to be Clubhouse, but with recording and hosting. And I think if that's what they're trying to do, I don't think it's going to work, because I don't think people want to go and listen back to old Clubhouse conversations, essentially.
I could see Fireside being used for maybe events. Like bringing on like a celebrity type where you have maybe like a group kind of, it's almost like almost taking a podcast live, you know, like I see it being used more that way, where you can bring in a core group of people, maybe an audience around you, you know, maybe charge for it. I'm not sure if you can do all this stuff. I'm just theorizing. Is like, you know, you have a celebrity, a big name, and you do want to make it a podcast, but you also want to maybe have some Q&A in there, interact, or maybe you want to have a special event with your people. Then you say, hey, we're doing a special over here. There's a lot of shit that I just don't know about Fireside.
Here's my other red flag that is a red flag without ever using Fireside, is that they've already been soliciting the creators on Fireside to be investors, which tells me they're not getting a lot of traction from the Silicon Valley investors. They're not getting a lot of traction from the people that are investing in things like this. So that this is just reading between the lines. I don't know if there's any sort of merit to this. I should probably get rid of this stupid soft language and just say what I think.
You should.
But
I'm waiting.
But
so is everyone else.
I think I think the fact that they're going out trying to get the people who are using Fireside to invest in it instead of going after the normal Silicon Valley investors and the venture capitalists and stuff is telling. It's telling me that the venture capitalists see it as a copy of Clubhouse and a Me Too product, and they don't want to get behind it. So I think that's a huge red flag as well.
Yeah. No, and I heard about that. So we got approached by them a couple times through email. I'm sure it was a solicited email to tons of podcasters. I doubt we're special, but we did get the email, and we scheduled a call at first, and then they had to reschedule, and then all this. We're just like, whatever, we don't have the time right now. And because a lot of those red flags started popping up, because we started hearing how creators are starting to get solicited without even really knowing details about the project.
Yeah.
Big red flag.
Yeah.
Clubhouse, on the other end, I know is backed with a bunch of bigger name investors.
Yeah. We know Naval's behind it.
They've been public about that. You know, there's a lot of Silicon Valley money behind it. Not saying that that's going to make it a success. That doesn't guarantee it at all. And these are all startups. I mean, they're going to pivot like crazy. So I totally agree. Like Fireside, same with Clubhouse and maybe Green Room. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know what Spotify sees in Green Room, because that definitely fell off the radar within like a week of it.
And then Twitter was doing something that I don't think's in Twitter anymore.
I think it is actually, but it's selective. Again, though, they're not picking up major steam. So I agree that it's never going to be like a major thing that people are going to pay attention to. But I do see it as a place that it's just another place to get discovered. And if you choose that to be your medium, like maybe you just want to engage with people and have more like a talk show kind of podcast, maybe that's a place for you.
Yeah. So I think here's my opinion on platforms like that.
Yeah.
I think when platforms like that come out, there's a lot of buzz created around them. So I think it's a smart tactic, a smart strategy to capitalize on that buzz, right? We got on Clubhouse pretty much as soon as we were made aware of Clubhouse.
Like mid-December.
Yeah, like, you know, it'd been around for a while, but as soon as we became aware of it, we figured out how to get on the platform. We got on the platform, and we were on there pretty much every day and interacting, and we saw a spike in growth in our podcast. Over time, we didn't see the same sort of growth numbers by doing these live things, but we did see a spike in the beginning. So I think it is powerful to go, ooh, this one, it may not be the future. It may not be the thing that everybody's super excited about, but you know what? A lot of people are talking about it, so let's go use it while people are talking about it and get the growth while we can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, because like when you were just saying that, the thing I loved about Clubhouse when we were using it is the engagement, like the interactions with people, and you can get very direct with people. It didn't feel like you had to spend a ton of time with people, like when if you're taking questions, let's say, and you're on stage. I liked that. Like,
I even heard Billie Jean on there go, that was a stupid question. Next. That's such a Billie Jean thing to do, though.
I know. Good for him. I mean, that's him.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the fact that we could answer a bunch of questions. It helped us kind of market research what people are interested in, what people are having trouble with, and, you know, gave us ideas to probably make more content around as well.
Yeah.
Time sucked though. Like for us at least, it just didn't make sense to always be in there because it demanded a ton of time. And I know for us that just wasn't going to fly. Nor did we want it to happen that way. But I genuinely think that people do want connection, and I mean, there's a lot of technology that separates our connections and doesn't allow for like two-way conversation. I think these help if that's your thing. But again, there's a massive downside, I feel like, that it can consume your time. It can consume your priorities that you thought, like, it was destroying schedules, man. Like, I remember that when it was starting. I don't know. Maybe people just figured out how to use it better.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, that's why we bailed out a lot. Like,
I think one of the smartest things I saw happening on Clubhouse was people using it to pitch investors. Like, in a pandemic world, like, Clubhouse was the right product at the right time, right? Because it came out in December of, well, I don't know when it came out. We got on board in December of 2020.
Yeah, it was like mid 2020.
So it came out like mid 2020, which was like right when the pandemic was like full swing and everybody was staying inside and lockdowns and all of that kind of stuff. Nobody was traveling, so we now had a way to interact with people in a time where it was much harder to interact with like groups of people. Like we couldn't go to events where 50 people were all hanging out, but you can have a Clubhouse room where 50 people were all hanging out. You couldn't go speak on a stage in front of a large audience in person, but you can create your own stage and speak in front of a large audience on Clubhouse. So I think there was a huge timing element that came along with Clubhouse, and I think all of these copycat platforms that are trying to come along are like missing the reason that it got big in the first place.
It's true.
But the people that were on there going, ooh, this is where all the like tech investors are hanging out, they were going on there and pitching their ideas. Remember Arjun? We were talking to this dude Arjun who was just going to town on Clubhouse pitching investors,
bucks,
and he was raising huge money. Right. So I'm not saying there's no use for it, there's no place for it. I'm just saying that I don't think it's. I think the fad of it's going to die off, and I think that all of these other copycat platforms are missing the reason that it actually got big in the first place.
What was telling? There was one conversation, some room, and I'm always gonna. Well, there was a couple of rooms. Like the first room we did with Tyrese Gibson.
This is so cool to be able to bring our mics over here and look at each other.
Cool. Wow, look, I can look at you deep into your eyes. Don't lose contact, Matt.
All right, keep going.
All right.
Finish your thought.
Who's going to break eyesight first?
Well, I'm going to blink, but just so you know.
Fuck, I broke. I blinked first. No, but still didn't break. Long extended. God, now I'm distracted. Okay. Back to where we're at. The room so I mentioned Tyrese. It was super cool because the very first room we ever started randomly, I think it was Brad Costanza was there. Sean Vossler eventually showed up and ended up emceeing the whole damn thing. But then Tyrese Gibson from Fast and Furious and all these other things showed up randomly and ended up riffing with us on stage for like 45 minutes. And that was cool. He told us some story about meeting Jeff Bezos and thinking of imposter syndrome. Like we were asking him, like, dude, how is that? And what were you thinking? And it was really cool. He was just being a cool guy and getting to know Bezos. And they hit it off. But the room there was one, I remember specifically, it was like past midnight. I definitely should have been asleep because, I had a young kid at the time, still do, but younger then, that was not sleeping. And I was like, I can't put this down. And it was Naval Ravikant in there. His brother, Kamal Ravikant, we've had him on the show before. And there was someone from Apple that was pretty high up, I think a designer of some sort, and then a few other investors. I think someone from Andreessen Horowitz. So, I mean, huge Silicon Valley people. And I remember them talking specifically about the internet marketers that flooded onto Clubhouse. Because I remember seeing Naval's name actually pop around in some of these internet marketing chats. And I was like, interesting. What's he doing? And then I saw a room where it was just like 30 people, and I happened to be in there, and I was just like, whoa, like what kind of opportunity is this? And they were totally, and this is not recorded or anything because you don't do that there, but they were like, man, it's wild how this platform has changed. Like, and they were talking about how the internet marketers were doing all this like one-upping kind of thing, these contests, the structures. They were talking about how interesting it is that they've used this technology differently than what it was actually made for as like the Silicon Valley project and what they invested in originally. I don't think they I don't know, I guess they enjoyed it maybe because it probably grew popularity, but like the mechanism was completely different with the different audiences that used it. So I don't know what they would say. I'd be kind of curious. I'm very curious actually. But I mean, it's interesting with different lenses. People just see it as a different tool. So I guess my prediction is that, or maybe not prediction, but my feeling is that these are all tools. They're all going to be used in different ways, but I don't know about Fireside though. Yeah. They're going direct to podcasters and calling them out on the biggest stage, or one of the biggest stages, in podcasting. So
it's a good marketing strategy.
It is. It's smart. I mean, Mark Cuban's a smart guy. There's a reason why he did that.
Yeah. One other quick little rabbit hole that I think is a sort of fun topical thing of the moment. Around content creators.
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans just decided.
OnlyFans. Matt's favorite website up until earlier this week.
Yeah, I mean, I got because I mean,
you got the boot.
I got the boot.
You're the creator on the platform, not the consumer.
I was showing my.
Hey now. Put them away.
No, I've never actually used OnlyFans, but I am familiar.
Nor have I.
But with OnlyFans, they've decided that they are no longer going to allow explicit content on the platform. And my very first thought was, there's something other than explicit content on OnlyFans.
I think that's probably most people's thought.
I don't think anybody realized that OnlyFans was used for something other than adult content, right?
I mean, it's true. I mean, again, no experience, but it is very interesting. Yeah, they decided to take away explicit content. There's already pop-ups, other websites popping up in apps that will satisfy those needs for folks.
Yeah.
But it got us talking about how it's interesting because that's a platform of its own. People created profiles, they created communities, recurring revenue from their subscriptions. A lot of people, it boomed over the recession. I mean, there was a little bit
pandemic,
of that, but the pandemic,
it was a side hustle for people. They made extra money on it.
And think of let's put the sex worker thing aside, but people that built the platform, like you were saying earlier, now they just got the boot, big fat boot in the ass, and now they're out. Think of all the families and people out now.
Yeah, like you said, completely take the fact that these people are putting adult content online. If you ignore that fact, this is like a Patreon, right? This is a platform where people created content, they put the content online, they built these communities, and these are the people who built up OnlyFans, right? The reason anybody's ever even heard of OnlyFans is because of these creators. These people are who made them big, and OnlyFans would be a nothing website. Nobody would have ever heard about it. Nobody would be talking about it if it wasn't for the explicit content that was on there. And now they're saying, oh, thanks for building our platform and giving us the valuation we have today, but we're booting all of you, right? And that's just... And
are they a public company? Do you know?
No, but they're trying to raise capital, which is part of their... they just released an OnlyFans app, I guess. And
they didn't have one before?
No,
I thought they would have.
I guess they just released an OnlyFans app, and they're trying to raise investor money for OnlyFans. And and so Apple doesn't allow explicit content in apps, first of all. And then I guess they were having issues with payment processors getting shut down because there's a much higher propensity for fraud on adult websites than any other website. So they kept on having payment processor issues, and also they wanted to make it look more valuable to investors, which I think you can argue that it probably makes it a lot less valuable to investors because the creators that built it all up are now getting booted.
And their cash cow just went out the window.
And I think it's the
their competitors.
Stupidest decision, because now let's say you and I decide we want to create a membership site. Are we going to create it on OnlyFans? Are we going to go on a podcast and be like, hey, go check out our OnlyFans, right? It just sounds weird now. The brand is too freaking burnt into people's minds of what it actually is.
And think of the power of the brand, even though it was explicit content, that seeped into society. The knowing that that's what happens on that platform, that's what helped build that brand and that connection to the world. Even though we have never used OnlyFans, that's now forever planted in our brain, as that's where people go and show off some stuff for a little bit of coin. I mean, seriously. And now what's it gonna do? Are they gonna rebrand their name as well? And
I don't know.
It'll be fascinating.
And the people that were on there, what do they do? I know, yes, there's other platforms popping up, but now they have to repopulate these other platforms with all of their content. Are all their members going to migrate? Because it's not like the billing is going to get transferred over. They have to get everybody to sign up. So all of the recurring subscriptions are dead now. And you've got to talk all of the fans that are over here to coming over to this new subscription service, which is going to be a nightmare for them. them, right? So like it's a rough place to be in. And although I'm not a customer of this site, I do feel for the creators.
For sure. Well, my takeaway here is that this is a platform just like any other platform. They're all platforms. Clubhouse is a platform, Fireside, freaking Spotify, Apple, whatever. They're all platforms that you probably don't want to put an extreme amount of weight under or in. I mean, some more than others, obviously.
Be diversified.
Yeah, be diversified. But like, it's what Dan Kennedy said a long time ago. It's like the worst number in business is 1. So I'm sure a lot of these folks don't think about the business side of it or being diversified with their showing off content, but like
they're showing off content,
or below in your case. So
Joe's my only subscriber,
just one cheek.
I don't know why he's still subscribed.
I mean, just a laugh. It's nothing I haven't seen. Carrying on. No,
go ahead.
It's just funny. I mean, like it's not. I think the platform thinking is very smart to do, but this is just case in point of don't put all your weight into one.
Yeah, leverage multiple platforms.
That's it. And then be strategic with how you leverage platforms as well. It's like they're not all going to be the same tool for all the reasons you want. Discovery might be from one platform and you bring them over to something else, you know, like, or listen to, like that's how we see podcasts and YouTube. It's like discovery, YouTube, podcast, connection, and deeper bonds. And from there, continue to listen to the podcast, but then get onto our email list.
Is this turning into a pitch for Podhacker?
No,
because it could.
It totally could and should. Yes, let's end it that way because we're already over time.
We are. Yeah.
So let's do that because that's the journey. I feel like the journey is where it's all about, and platforms are just going to keep popping up. Some are gonna rise to popularity. A lot are gonna get crushed. Doesn't matter how much funding's behind them. It's exactly all the stuff that we're talking about here. So
yeah. So I mean, if you want to go deeper on this stuff, this is what we actually teach and talk about in Podhacker. We've got our sort of beam framework: build, engage, amplify, monetize. All of the phases that we believe are important for a podcaster, but also for a creator. We're really, really focused on both podcasters and creators because, as we've talked about a lot, we're doing a lot on YouTube, so we can't leave that out of Podhacker. So if you're focused on podcasting or YouTube or ideally both,
it's your brand. Actually, at the end of the day, if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur with a brand that you want to grow, I would say just because this is a brand. This is how you spread your brand online these days.
Yeah. So check all that out over at podhacker.com. We do these expert sessions and we do these live office hours once a month, 2 separate sessions, but the live office hours are like this. It's basically 2 hours of us kind of riffing on all the latest news and where we see things going and what we would do and what we are doing to sort of navigate where things are going. So it's a very, very valuable thing to be a member of because it's a one-time price and we just do these things every month for all of our customers.
We can't help ourselves. We can't stop.
Yeah, so podhacker.com.
Go there. That's everything you need. And we also have a little news thing this is a second call to action. But if you go to podhacker.com/news, you'll see some weekly emails from us. Just every Monday we send out a lot of the stuff that we're staying up on, the news and everything. But Podhacker is the deep dive.
Yep.
So what else? We also have a action guide of this episode. Just a little reminder to y'all. I think we covered a lot here that was interesting. I think it was interesting.
Yeah.
So get the notes, the flow notes over at flowchartgroup.com. 2 weeks to get those at the time of this recording going live. Go to flowchartgroup.com and plug in your email address.
Yes, you can also join our group when you do that, but we'll send you the notes as well.
We will, of course. And then Easy Webinar, our fabulous sponsor that continues to show the love for you and us. So that's everything webinars. So if webinars are a key part of your business that maybe you want to optimize right now or one that you want to explore, that's the platform to do it because it does everything. Webinars.
It does.
And you could probably get creative with podcasting and other types of content on there because you could live stream and do all sorts of funny stuff. It's kind of like a Zoom too. You can even have multiple people on there. It expands your mind when it comes to webinars.
Yes, it does.
It's going to take care of you, and they're hooking you up on the price.
Yeah, it builds all the landing pages and everything for you too.
Reporting, automations, all the crap that you shouldn't be doing.
Yes. So if you go to easywebinar.com/hustle, they're hooking you up with a discount because you're a Hustle and Flowchart listener.
So go there, Hustle and Float. Nope, not that one. Easywebinar.com/hustle. hustle. And if you love this episode, please tell others and go find us on YouTube if you haven't already. If you're there already, thank you. Go to hustleandflowchart.tv and hit that red subscribe button or whatever color it is for you.
Yeah.
That's going to help us out to show this to more people. And we love you. Thank you. Appreciate you. Bye. Till next time. We out.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. Before taking the time to listen, we want to give you something a little bit special. Every single episode that we do, we actually have somebody on our team take notes. We basically have a Cliff's Notes version of every episode where you can go and find all of the tips and tactics that they laid out, all of the resources that they laid out, all the good stuff from this episode. We actually have a nice simple notes version that you can find on our website. So go to evergreenprofits.com, find this episode that you just listened to, and give us your email address and we'll send you the notes. Thanks for listening.